In this week's drive, we slam, bam, slide and prang into the wall. See the writing on the wall for a champion. Look down the field, a long way down. And see through the smoke and mirrors to the future. All this and more in this week's Drive. We start this week with the Champ Cars, who crossed the Pacific to Surfers Paradise in Australia for the penultimate round of the championship. There was trouble on the first turn of the first lap. There was a bottleneck into the chicane and Cristiano De Mata drove into the back of pole starter Oriol Sevilla. Sevilla was able to stay in the race, finishing fifth and guaranteeing him a second-place finish in the series championship. But the car of Mario Dominguez was too badly damaged to continue. Early in the race, Australian Marcus Marshall, driving for Team Australia, was black flagged by officials who deemed his loose front wing hazardous. His pit crew made repairs, but the stop took 30 seconds and Marshall managed only 11th place. Paul Tracy was black flagged on lap 24 with a steaming turbo. When Tracy pitted, his crew shut the engine down, but gearbox problems ended his day. Nearing the end of the race, Team Australia teammates Alex Tagliani and Will Power collided in any team owner's worst nightmare. It appeared Tagliani caused the crash by driving down the inside and touching the back of Power's car, which sent him into the safety barrier. Tagliani was able to overcome that incident and finished in fourth place.
That should mean we'd see Wilson to pit road for a splash of fuel next time by. That would probably give service.
This race, however, belonged to Sébastien Bourdais, who led the final 37 laps en route to his fifth win in the last 6 races and the 16th in 44 starts. Bourdais needed only to start the race in Surfers Paradise to win his second straight championship. The Frenchman needed just 1 point to take the crown. Just starting guaranteed him at least a last-place finish and a single point, and the number 1 on his car next year. He's just the 5th Champ Car driver to win back-to-back titles. He's finished all 12 races this year, a feat achieved by only 4 drivers since 1956, most recently Jimmy Vasser in 1996. The Martinsville Speedway, at just over half a mile, is the oldest, shortest and tightest track used in NASCAR's Premier Series. Tony Stewart was in front of the pack when the green flag waved, a position he would hold for most of the day. The first big pile-up of the day came on lap 175. Mike Bliss hit the outside wall and bounced down the narrow track into Sterling Marlin, who slammed into Ricky Rudd.
The car hits Sterling and throws, literally. And Ricky Rudd, I'm sure this is just being at the wrong place at the wrong time.
Mark Martin, who came into the race 51 points behind Stewart in the title chase, fell even further behind when his brakes went in lap 435.
Yeah, you're right, BP. It doesn't look like he can slow the car down.
Martin headed for the pits, but he couldn't stop, nearly hitting several members of the pit crew. Martin instead headed into the garage and would end the day in 7th place in the chase, 170 points behind Stewart.
There you see the fire, BP.
Well, that looks like brake fluid coming out of the right front.
When Travis Kvapil spun off with just 6 laps remaining, it brought out the 19th caution flag, a record at this track. 113 of the 500 laps were run under yellow flags. That yellow led to a 3-lap free-for-all at the end, with Jeff Gordon leading ahead of Stewart. Jimmy Johnson was third as Chevrolet claimed the top 5 places. Gordon was able to hold on and post his 7th victory at Martinsville and the 73rd of his career, but his first since May. Gordon, a 4-time champion, didn't qualify for the 10-race final chase for the championship playoff and has finished in the top 10 just 3 times in 14 races.
Steve Letarte, the winning crew chief today, Bill.
4th win of 2005 for Jeff Gordon.
The 2005 Formula One season may be over, but that doesn't mean that former world champion Michael Schumacher is on holiday. Recently, he was at the watchmakers and personal sponsors Omega in Switzerland, and while there, he reflected on the disappointment of the past season.
It was a surprise that we have been able to stay for so long at the top. It's usually you can stay there for 2-3 years and then other teams become stronger and you may stay in position to fight, but you might not win the championship finally. Saying that, it is quite a surprise to win the championship and fall down the next year so far. Although we finished third in the constructor and in the drivers' championship, which is a big surprise after such a year.
He doesn't hide his disappointment. As much as Schumacher is lauded as the best Formula One driver in present times, 7 times world champion, it's obvious that he, his team and the world had expected an 8th title.
Everybody is greatly disappointed after the performance of this year, and it's not our standard, absolutely not, and you believe that we're all highly motivated to come back to our normal performance. And as I said before, it's a sport, you can't predict whether you win, you don't win, but at least you want to be in position to fight for it, and that's our objective to do this.
As is often the case at the end of a Formula One season, there are discussions about changes in rules, some of which Michael welcomes.
I'm quite glad to see tyre changes coming back due to the fact for safety was at certain stages very unsafe, plus the effort in testing to test each tyre for full race distance meant you had to do a tremendous number of laps, and in this respect I'm glad in general. If you look at the total picture, it goes the right direction, but in details you always could have some fine-tuning.
The big question is how much longer Michael will compete. The only record he hasn't claimed is the number of pole positions, currently held by the late Ayrton Senna.
Well, basically I have a contract which goes until the end of next year. At some stage next year I want to make up my mind to how is my future looking. But full concentration is first of all to organize and sort out the problems to be competitive next year.
2006 is also a big year for Germany, hosts of the Soccer World Cup, an event which Schumacher, an avid soccer fan, is looking forward to.
Being German and knowing the cup is coming to us, we made some commercials to support the event, and I look forward to join one or two matches to have a look.
He may be down, but he's certainly not out. Michael's competitive spirit will be just as strong next year, it seems. Formula One Supremo Bernie Ecclestone and team bosses gathered in London to approve changes ahead of next year's racing. Next season will see a switch to a knockout qualifying system with tyre changes making a comeback, but Ecclestone was cautious when asked about the changes before the meeting.
Well, it's nothing really, just trying to sort out the qualifying for next year.
Was he interested in anything in particular?
I'm interested in everything.
Was he hoping for detailed agreements?
Qualifying with 2008 regulations, there's enough consensus.
Only general regulation, that's all, nothing else.
For qualifying, I mean.
On qualifying sessions?
We will get a change.
We've got to have a change.
He was followed in by Renault's Flavio Briatore and McLaren's team chief Ron Dennis, whose team enjoyed a mid-season renaissance to finish a fighting second in the 2005 championship. Next to arrive was the head of Williams Formula One, Sir Frank Williams, who's just lost BMW as a partner, and Ferrari's managing director and team chief Jean Todt, who masterminded the Scuderia's run of success and will be focused on regaining the top spot. BAR Honda's boss Nick Fry was hopeful.
Hopefully productive.
Peter Sauber has sold his team to BMW and arrived for the meeting not in a chauffeur-driven limousine, but in a taxi. Red Bull team's Christian Horner was attending his first team boss meeting. Bridgestone's Hiroshi Yasukawa, the team suppliers for Ferrari, Minardi and Jordan, have been blamed for Ferrari's lack of competitiveness. Formula One is in the throes of a power struggle, pitting 5 major car makers against the governing body and Ecclestone. Mercedes, BMW, Renault, Honda and Toyota are threatening their own series from 2008 unless they get greater transparency, more of the revenue and a level playing field for all participants.
The main proposals that were discussed today were changing the qualifying next year into a system where the cars are going to run much more on the circuit, and we're going to eliminate the slower ones in 2 stages. Then the 10 fastest will go for the last 20 minutes, running as many laps as they like. In addition to that, we're going to change tyres during the race, again, like we did in 2004. The need for keeping one tyre all the way through the race, which was done for keep the cars a bit slower this year. That will have disappeared with the new, smaller engines. And probably the biggest change is the agreement that in 2007 will bring in radically new shaped cars with much bigger wheels and tyres, slick tyres, and a single tyre manufacturer. That's got to go now to our technical working group to look at the details, but the principle has been agreed.
Sunday qualifying was introduced this year and then abandoned after 6 races because of protests. Tyre changes are also making a return, despite objections from some teams.
Well, the changes for 2007 are to enable the cars to overtake. At the moment, you need more or less a 2-second advantage in order to overtake, and we feel that's too big. We'd rather have cars able to overtake more or less at will. That will be the case with these new regulations.
Mosley was also asked for his vision of the sport in 2 years' time.
I think we're going to have, with any luck, the full 12 teams back in, so we've got completely full grids, competitive cars, a reduction in costs so that the independent teams can survive and it isn't just teams that are backed by a major manufacturer. And then generally better racing, more overtaking, closer competition. All of those things I think we're now well on the way to achieving.
Good. I think we're going to find, I just hope Ferrari get back to where they should be, and we're going to have 3 or 4 teams really competing, which is what we need.
It was a positive meeting. I think some very good outcomes of it, and I'm sure the FIA will publish very shortly what those outcomes are. And as I say, my first commission meeting, and it was held in a very positive light.
A proposal for a radical new rear wing concept was examined. The centerline downwash generating wing would replace the current single rear wing with 2 box-like wings behind each rear wheel.
I think it's too early to say. Most of us only saw those changes this morning in the newspaper before we came into the room. So I think it caught most people by surprise, particularly the aesthetic look of the car. And I'm sure that because now it has to go through a process of gaining 8 votes out of 10 in the technical working group, I'm not so convinced that it's going to go through. Not for 07. 08, it's a different story.
And finally, there was a surprise for 75-year-old Bernie Eccleston.
Happy birthday, dear Bernie. Happy birthday to you.
Is it?
Get through that again.
Looking to the future now, Opel recently showed a concept car which points the way to the German car maker's view of what the sport utility vehicle should be. With its 4-wheel drive Antara GTC, or Gran Turismo crossover concept vehicle, Opel demonstrates how dynamic and athletic an SUV can be. The basic design of the body is characteristic of an off-road vehicle, short overhangs for large angles of approach and departure, rolling on 20-inch aluminium wheels. It also has the typical features of a coupe, 2 doors and a tailgate, frameless side windows without a B-pillar, and an elegantly sloping roof towards the back. All the lights in the Antara are light-emitting diodes, which have a longer life and shorter response time than conventional lamps. The styling picks up on Opel's current designs, which have gone into production, such as the Speedster, Astra, Tigra and Zafira. Opel have confirmed that a road-going Antara SUV will be on sale next year.
It is our interpretation of this relatively new crossover segment. It's tough, it's athletic, and emotional. Firstly, from a distance, you can really appreciate the cool coupe upper with this kind of SUV lower proportion. This proportion is intended to visually communicate driving enthusiasm for the adventurous spirit.
The body colour Everglade mica features glimmering pigments normally used on banknotes. The contrasting dark bumpers and the bottom body strip on the side demonstrate rugged protection. Inspiration for this came from the soles of sports shoes, which no longer confined to under the shoe. Even the profile of the tyres is the work of the design team, and the pattern is repeated on the rubber pads on the pedals. Antara also meets demanding practical requirements. The tailgate, for example, has a pantographic hinge. Thanks to this innovative design, when it is opened, it swings upwards and to the front so that the person loading the vehicle is not forced to step backwards. The door handles sit flush with the body and only slide out when the owner approaches the vehicle with an electronic transponder opening device. The two rear seats can fold away completely, producing a completely flat loading area. The front seats are anchored on monorails and look as if they're floating. They slide forward right up to the instrument panel to allow the passengers to climb more easily into the rear seats. The Antara is powered by a 156 kilowatt twin-turbo version of Opel's 1.9-litre common rail diesel engine. With its hefty torque at low engine speeds, 400 Newton-meters at just 1400 RPM, the two-stage turbocharged diesel is ideal for this type of vehicle. In combination with a 6-speed automatic transmission, computer simulations suggest the four-wheel drive Antara concept could see a top speed of over 210 kilometers an hour and an acceleration from 0 to 100 in around 8 seconds. Despite burning diesel fuel, the transverse four-cylinder engine features two overhead camshafts, 4 valves per cylinder, and a variable turbo blade geometry. Fuel supply to the cylinders is controlled by a common rail system with a pressure of up to 1600 bar. The heart of the innovative twin-turbo technology is forced aspiration through two exhaust-driven turbochargers, which, unlike biturbo systems, operate in series rather than in parallel. A small, highly responsive turbocharger for low engine speeds, and a larger turbo designed for high output which takes over as the revs build up. Thanks to its superior efficiency, the twin-turbo system can achieve an extremely high specific power output without the disadvantages in fuel consumption and exhaust emissions. One familiar feature is the roof of the Antara. Along the length of the car are two skylights to allow more light into the interior, an option with the new Zafira. The strip between them is equipped with storage compartments. The contrast between luxurious looks and muscular detail extend to the interior. Warm tones and the use of leather interplay with technical materials like carbon fiber on the seatbacks, stainless steel and aluminium in the cockpit. The instruments and the controls for the infotainment system and the air conditioning are backlit in turquoise. When driving off-road, displays in the two circular instruments inform the driver of the gradient, both up and down, and of the lateral or tilt angle of the vehicle. And instead of a conventional carpet, the Antara is fitted with sisal, a solution that combines environmental stylishness with excellent wear properties. For the second time this season, Belgium's Thierry van den Bosch had a perfect weekend with 2 wins in the S1 class in Athens. The reigning champion had beaten Ivan Lazzarini by 10 seconds in the opening race. His second race was more difficult, Germany's Bernd Hiemer pressuring him all the way. Lazzarini of Italy had a heavy crash in the off-road section on lap 4. Second in the first heat, Ivan was third when he crashed, handing third place to teammate Delapine. Delapine was soon chased down by Jürgen Kunzel. Third in the first heat after a crash, Hiemer finished second overall behind Van den Bosch, followed by championship leader Gerald Delapine, who maintained his lead with points for a third and fourth place finish. Thierry van den Bosch's second win was hard-fought, and his teammate and challenger was bitterly disappointed at being held off as they crossed the line. Delapine heads into the last round of the series in Italy with a strong lead of 20 points over Bernd Hiemer and 31 over van den Bosch. In the S2 category, Boris Chambon of France twice managed to steal a lead from second position on the grid, but in both races the pack put him under enormous pressure. Jérôme Girardot was one of his main rivals and battled with him during the first race until the last lap. The reigning world champion changed settings for the second race on his Aprilia. In the second heat, his main rival was Belgian Eddie Seal, who recovered after a disappointing opening race. Blowing his start, he came back to fifth and then won the next race to end his day third on the podium behind Chambon and Girardot, who mounted a series of torrid attacks on Seal but was unable to get by. Third and sixth, Adrien Charret lost the red plate, but is only 5 points in the standings behind Chambon, who is leading the series for the first time this season by a solitary point over Seal. The last event of the series is the Grand Prix of Italy in Latina. Finally, we'll take a look at a works team that we've only seen when they get lapped. A works team with some top-notch drivers who might never win again, but haven't given up trying. A works team which goes to the races, works the long hours, spends the money, and tries to be enthusiastic about coming ninth. Over the years, Drive has reported on many forms of motorsport, 2 wheels and 4, on land, sea and sky. Motorsport being what it is, we've followed the fortunes of the winners, the leaders, the fastest and the quickest. Sometimes a perennial winner becomes a loser for a while, stoic Michael Schumacher for example, while others overstay their best-by dates like Max Biaggi. But what of the entrants who never get near the podium, who only smell, not taste the champagne, and hear of but don't see the checkered flag? One such squad is the Chevrolet team of Alain Menu, Nicola Larini and Robert Huff, racing in the World Touring Car Championship. The team's press releases contain depressingly bald statements like, "An electrical problem shut off his engine and started filling the cockpit with smoke at the end of the first lap." But they keep at it, and for that, we salute them. The team's drivers include the immensely experienced Swiss ace Menu, twice British touring car champion, who can list Formula Ford, Formula 3000, an Opel Astra V8 in DTM, and a Ferrari at Le Mans on his resume. Similarly, Larini lists Formula 1 and DTM races among his qualifications. Formula 1 drivers don't necessarily make top-class touring car drivers, but Nicola Larini is proof that they can. The 40-year-old Italian succeeded straight away in turning the experience he gained in 48 Grand Prix, including driving for Ferrari, into victories behind the wheel of touring cars as a 15-year Alfa Romeo veteran. He won the Italian Super Turismo Championship in 1992 and followed this up with a DTM title in '93. In the European Touring Car Championship, forerunner to the World Championship, Larini chalked up 8 victories. At 25, Briton Rob Huff is the youngster of the team, but he already has a string of karting, single-seater and saloon car championships to his name. The cars they drive are badged as Chevrolet Lachettis, based on the version sold in Canada, itself based on a Korean Daewoo model. Both Daewoo and Chev brands are part of General Motors. According to regulations, each car weighs 1,140 kilograms, carries a maximum of 50 litres of fuel, and has a 2-litre 4-cylinder twin-cam engine producing about 270 brake horsepower at 8,500 RPM. Depending upon the gearing used in the 6-speed sequential gearbox, top speed is anything up to 254 kilometers an hour on the 9 by 17-inch wheels and Michelin slick tyres. To be fair, the team was only formed 2 years ago and is still gathering data which will be channeled into next year's efforts. One round from the end of the series, Menu lies 16th, Larini 18th and Huff 19th, with 5, 4 and 3 points respectively. In the Manufacturers' Championship, Chevrolet trails in 4th place, behind BMW, Alfa Romeo and Seat. And finally, the flag falls, but not this time for the Chev, which is sadly a lap down. So whether you're standing up to celebrate yet another win, or sitting down to celebrate yet another year, so you stay on track and up to speed, make sure you catch next week's Drive